Thornfield Manor sat on the outskirts of a sleepy southern town, its presence a shadow over the community for as long as anyone could remember. The locals spoke of the house in hushed tones, a relic of a dark past that few dared to acknowledge. The plantation house had been abandoned for decades, left to rot under the weight of its own history. But when the last living relative of the Thornfield family passed away, the manor was inherited by 4 distant cousins: Daniel, Elaine, Vincent, and Sarah. 4 relatives had barely known each other before this strange inheritance. Daniel, a quiet schoolteacher with a passion for history. Elaine, a sharp-tongued lawyer with a skeptic's heart. Vincent, a struggling artist seeking inspiration. And Sarah, a nurse with a deep sense of empathy. They arrived at Thornfield Manor together, their curiosity piqued by the mystery of the house and the possibility of valuable antiques hidden within its walls. The first thing they noticed was the silence. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of wind through the trees. The air around the manor was thick and still, like the world had forgotten this place. As they stepped inside, the floorboards groaned under their weight, and the scent of mildew and decay filled their lungs. Dust swirled in the pale light filtering through the cracked windows, giving the impression that the house itself was breathing. They found the manor almost untouched by time. Furniture draped in white sheets, walls lined with faded portraits of stern-looking ancestors, and rooms cluttered with forgotten relics of a bygone era. But there was something else. An oppressive feeling, as if the house was watching them, waiting for something. It didn't take long for them to start finding things that made their skin crawl. Daniel discovered a ledger in the study detailing the lives and deaths of the slaves who had once been forced to toil on the plantation. The entries were meticulous, cold, recording every punishment, every death, without a trace of remorse. Elaine found old court documents tucked away in a secret compartment in the library. They revealed that the Thornfield family had been involved in more than just plantation work. They had engaged in dark rituals, using the slaves as unwilling participants in their attempts to communicate with spirits. Vincent, exploring the basement, uncovered something even more disturbing: a hidden room behind a wall of bricks. The room was filled with crude symbols etched into the stone, a circle of charred earth in the center. The air was thick with the scent of burnt offerings, and the walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, just out of sight. Sarah was the first to sense the presence of the spirits. As she wandered through the house, she felt a cold hand brush against her cheek, heard whispered voices in the dark. At first she thought it was her imagination, but the sensations grew stronger, more insistent. The others dismissed her concerns, chalking it up to nerves, but Sarah knew better. There was something in the house with them, something that had been waiting a long time to be free. The first night in the house, the 4 cousins were awakened by the sound of chains, rattling and mournful cries echoing through the halls. The temperature dropped suddenly, their breath visible in the air. As they gathered in the parlor trying to make sense of what was happening, the house seemed to come alive. Shadows moved where there should have been none, and the walls groaned as if in pain. It was then that the spirits made their presence known. They appeared as twisted, tormented figures, their bodies marked by the horrors they had endured in life. The ghosts of the slaves who had died on the plantation, their eyes filled with anger and sorrow. They did not speak, but their message was clear. They wanted revenge. The house became a prison. Every door they tried was locked, every window sealed tight. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, and the walls seemed to close in around them. The ghosts tormented them with visions of the past, forcing them to witness the atrocities committed by their ancestors. They saw the rituals, the sacrifices, the endless suffering of those who had been enslaved. The spirits were relentless, their fury a palpable force that crushed any hope of escape. Daniel, desperate to find a way out, turned to the ledger he had found earlier. He realized that the only way to appease the spirits was to perform a ritual of their own, one that would finally set the souls free. But the ritual required a sacrifice, one of their own bloodline. Elaine refused to believe it, insisting that there had to be another way. But as the night wore on, and the spirits grew more violent, she began to waver. Vincent, always the dreamer, suggested they destroy the hidden room in the basement, believing that it was the source of the spirits' power. But when they tried, the room fought back, the walls themselves closing in, trapping them inside. Sarah, The most sensitive to the spirits was the first to break. She began to see the faces of the ghosts in the faces of her cousins, her mind unraveling under the strain. She screamed that they had to perform the ritual, that it was the only way to end the nightmare. But the others hesitated, unable to bring themselves to make such a sacrifice. In the end, it was Daniel who made the decision. He couldn't bear to see the others suffer any longer. He told them to prepare the ritual, that he would be the one to offer himself. But as they gathered in the hidden room, the spirits had other plans. The ritual was interrupted by a forceful gust of wind that extinguished the candles, plunging the room into darkness. The ghosts surged forward, their forms shifting and writhing, as if they were made of smoke and shadow. They seized Daniel, dragging him into the circle, his screams echoing off the walls as the ground opened up beneath him. The others watched in horror as Daniel was consumed by the darkness, his body twisted and broken by the unseen force. The room shook violently, the walls cracking as the spirits let out a collective wail that pierced their souls. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The spirits were gone, the house silent once more. Vincent, Elaine, and Sarah stood in stunned silence, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on them. They had survived, but at what cost? The house was still standing, its secrets buried once more, but the spirits had taken their revenge. As they left Thornfield Manor, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon, they knew that the past would never truly be laid to rest. The house still stood, a monument to the horrors of a bygone era, waiting for the next unsuspecting souls to enter its doors. And the spirits, though appeased for now, were far from finished.